Welcome back to the Integrate Intelligent podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Brickler, as always accompanied by my brother, owner and CEO and founder of CADTALK Software, Scott Brickler. Scott, good to see you again today. We have today with us a guest from Infor. So Tyler Springer. So it's nice Tyler to be on here today. Today, I'll talk a little bit about the future of manufacturing with Infor, AI, machine learning with CloudSuite Industrial. So Tyler, we start off every conversation, we start off kind of the same way. A little bit about you. So the hero journey, right? How did you get to where you are? How did you get how did you get to come to Infor? What's your background? What is that origin story?
Awesome. Absolutely. Yes. Thanks, Jeff. And want to first lead off by thanking both you and Scott for having me today. And then, kind of my journey to Infor. I'll begin with the role it's been very diverse and enriching, with a strong background in software engineering and a passion for innovation. I also acquired some business development along the way and truly dedicated my career to helping organizations transform their operations now through cutting edge technology solutions. But before, I actually was in even the recruitment space. So my professional path with an entrepreneurial stint at a startup, it kind of began at Plows and Mows. It was known as the snow plowing or the Uber of snow plowing and mowing out of Syracuse, New York. It snows quite a bit there. And really that experience taught me a lot of how to operate with minimal resources and some minimal guidance at times, right? It was a small company, about 15 of us. Following that, I went to a bit of a larger organization known as Bank of New York Mellon, or BNY Mellon is what it's referred to, as a tax specialist. So that's where I honed my analytical skills working with Excel and processing different complex tax adjustments. So the role really deepened my understanding of financial systems, compliance, and proved invaluable in my work with ERP systems as So from there, I was actually still in Syracuse, and my now wife and I decided to move to the Big Apple. And that's where I picked up my last stint. As I mentioned, I pivoted into recruitment as a 360 recruiter, where actually we were in charge of not only attaining the contracts with companies like Goldman Sachs, Point72, and things like that for a sourcing talent fee, if you will. So once we got that signed, we were in charge of kind of recruiting that talent by that hiring manager. So that was typically for me anywhere from data scientists, data engineers, and even data architects, all the way up to the managerial level. And that really stemmed my interest in the whole data world and kind of data as a service. And even I had a colleague move over to Infor from the recruitment space, who actually brought me over to Infor today. So today at Infor, kind of to round it out, I combine all these experiences right from recruitment to working as a tax specialist to help manufacturers leverage intelligent systems, drive efficiency, and foster innovation as a whole.
So so your usual experience was an incredible, diverse experience, very different from a lot of what I typically hear. So the standard hero's journey, at least for ERP, is like it's almost always, I worked at a company that implemented an ERP. It's almost like a cliche. I worked at a company that implemented an ERP, and they put me on a project, and that's where I learned how to do it. That's like everybody's story. Not everybody's, but that's a very common story. So yours is a bit different. So what is it that you take this unique experience? What is it that you do it in for? Are you like a consultant? Are you in sales? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So kind of an evolving role, which has been nice. We support our partner ecosystem. So obviously CADTALK is one of our major partners that we involve in a lot of our opportunities, all the way through implementation with companies in our partner ecosystem as well. So kind of as a solution consultant, solution architect at Infor, our role has really positioning CloudSuite Industrial, which is specialized for industrial manufacturers, obviously, and then kind of progressing in the future is now these key buzzwords of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and different components like that. And how do we not only position them, but show the true value to our customers with actual use cases and return on investment? So that's why, that solution architect component comes in, where we're helping use our platform as a service to really implement those new artificial intelligence, machine learning models with additional components with that software.
So it sounds like I think you mentioned this earlier, you have a bit of a software background. So that interest in artificial intelligence and machine learning, I would imagine that is from your software background, or at least that's because you have a software engineering degree. I think that's what you said.
Yeah, it's economics, and then I've done a lot of boot camps within software engineering,
Okay.
different
Okay.
codes like that. Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
So you don't
Yeah,
want to take too much credit from the software engineers that are true software engineers out there.
I'm the same way, Tyler. I'm an industrial engineer who self-taught programming. So I play a software engineer on TV, and then
Absolutely. Yeah.
our team here, like they're always amazed I know some of the things I know, but then they're surprised I don't know more. So
Just enough to be dangerous, right?
exactly, it doesn't have to be dangerous. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. It's always interesting to talk to people about different backgrounds because I have a very different background as well, coming from a completely different field and different role and different career. It's just always interesting to hear people how they come to ERP, right, where they come from. So yours is a bit different, but still very interesting enough. And it sounds like you've taken a pretty big interest in technology, and then now, of course, how the platform, as you've said, the Infor CloudSuite industrial platform, how customers can use that, leverage it for their business.
Absolutely, Jeff. Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I just mentioned is it's never like they're on college career fairs, right? ERP is one of those things that you come to almost come across, right? It's not
Yeah.
something that's ever positioned, if you will. So,
No, they definitely don't. They don't have like the Infor booth at the career fair. Like, come work in ERP, right?
exactly.
Like, it's not one of those like Scott and I always talk about. It's not the new hotness, right? It's not like everybody's like, yes, I work in ERP and manufacturing. This is the coolest thing, right? Every graduate these days wants to work at big tech, right? Oh, I want to work at Google or Facebook. Or I want to go to SpaceX or whatever, right? One of those things that's whatever the cool hotness is, right? Like, oh, that's so cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's
I think when people get into it, though, they realize how cool it actually is. I mean, that's one of the things that's like it doesn't have as much of. I see that a lot when we hire students coming out of college, things like that, and they get it's not the what they were thinking they were going to do. A lot of them want to play. A lot of them want to do video games. That's like the most common thing, right? And then you realize like those places are kind of like sweatshops, right? And they're not that interesting. But then when they get into it, like every problem. Once you understand the problem, it becomes more and more interesting. But it's not what they choose. But like it's a whole thing of like once you get into it, you get exposed to it, and you're like, this is actually really neat. Like these companies make everything. Like they make all the cool stuff that we use every day, and I hear all the problems they have. And this is like the interest. And so the problem, you kind of fall in love with the problem once you get exposed to it.
Every day is.
So
yeah. I mean, I think I mentioned this before because I have a degree in classics in Latin and Greek, and I often get the question like, "How in God's name did you get to that?" It's not dissimilar from ERP, right? It's not dissimilar. Like, well, how'd you get to that? And it's kind of a good point. Is like anything that you do, the more your level of interest and your excitement about something comes from your level of expertise, right? The more you know about it, the more of an expert you are, the more value you can bring to other people. And they're seen as an expert, the more exciting it is to you, right? Because all of us want to have a belonging, a sense of having value at our employer, among our colleagues, among people looking up to us and saying, hey, this guy knows something. I want to talk to him. That feeling is what drives people. That makes the problem interesting to you. You're like, this is cool because like I know it and it's important. Things that don't seem important from the outside, right? Because what seems important from the outside was like, the Google, the Facebook, or those like really big kind of things. But when you get down to it, anything that you do that has value can be interesting, but you got to give it the opportunity.
Yeah, it's that whole find your passion thing. It's actually more like you try a lot of things and then you get good at something, and the thing you're good at becomes your passion.
Absolutely.
Yep. That's usually how it
Falls
works.
in place.
Yes, it's not so easy to just go out and find your passion. Like, oh, I'm going to be, because no one grows up and goes, I'm going to be passionate about ERP. I'm going to be passionate about bills of materials, right?
Yeah.
And even some of our partners will joke with us like about integration, like, oh, we're going to do an integration demo today. This is going to be the hot topic, right? And you're like, and it's like, yeah, I understand that it doesn't, but once you learn more and more about it, the details and the complexity and also like how important it is, right? To your point, how important ERP is or how important these things are. You're like, hey, this is unimportant. This is like really kind of meat and potatoes of what we like needs to happen. It's really important for like your daily lives. You just don't realize it because it's no one's standing on the corner or at the job fair going, this is important.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
So Tyler, tell me a little bit about, the topic today is, kind of state of artificial intelligence and machine learning and CloudSuite Industrial. Maybe a little intro about what CloudSuite Industrial is, maybe, what kind of customers you serve, and then talk a little bit about, what's Infor's kind of plan or inspiration for machine learning and AI for that platform.
Absolutely. Yeah, great. And I think it's perfect transition, as you said, because not only, is ERP important, but understanding why it's important. I think same with AI and machine learning, right, is inevitable. So I think, first off, CloudSuite Industrial, as you mentioned, we like to think of it as a top tier ERP system specializing for industrial manufacturers, whether that be automotive manufacturers that are developing automotive components. We specialize in the medical devices field. We also large equipment and even heavy machinery. So we have customers ranging from Amada that creates the large machinery used to process a lot of these different bills of material operations, right? Metal stamping, CNC machines, and things like that, all the way through companies like Oliver Packaging and even process manufacturers that have minor process in the middle to kind of manage formulas and recipes. But really, as you mentioned earlier, Jeff, need that bills of material support, maybe not CAD in the form of a process manufacturer, but they need it to take all the way through inventory, financials, and then even analytics, which is constant monitoring throughout, making sure you're kind of attaining your key performance indicators, if you will. So CloudSuite Industrial kind of is that full soup to nuts ERP system. And then I think which makes it unique, as probably some people are aware, maybe not everybody, is Infor branded things as a cloud suite. So what that really is it's bringing the ERP as one component into your technology ecosystem. So now we have the ERP in the Cloud Suite, but we also have what we know as Infor operating services, which the ERP sits on top of. So your Infor OS or operating services can now stem across your entire ecosystem, including third-party applications. It's a workflow and alert engine as well that can stem off workflows and alerts for your ERP as well as those third-party applications. And then, as we're talking about today, invoking concepts like machine learning and artificial intelligence with those predictive models and other use cases that have already been brought about directly into the system, which we'll call hard baked into the software, if you will.
Good. Tell me a little bit about how are customers using that today? I mean, I know that you work on kind of the vision, right, and helping customers understand. But any stories of customers using AI or some of that process or what Infor does, Infor OS, some of that what you're talking about?
Yeah, great point. As you said, I think that's usually the biggest question that's asked, right? Is it's one thing that you guys have it, it's one thing that you can do it. Welcome to the table. Most companies are kind of having that now. Can you show us how it's worked? What kind of metrics has it produced, or what kind of cost savings? So, to your point, two great examples immediately come to mind, right? So, as part of that solution consulting role and positioning the concepts, we're also involved now in a lot more what we call engage workshops. Where the software is now implemented, but we're helping customers better use it through kind of their an ongoing journey with us, hopefully for life, right? Because ERPs are ginormous behemoth of systems that you don't want to rip out year in, year out, right? So two of those examples come to mind right off the bat. Predictive analytics with AI, one company utilized. So AI algorithms that would basically sensor data to predict equipment failures before they occur. So leading to reduced downtime and maintenance costs. One of the company for that was a large automotive component manufacturer. So they obviously had a lot of machinery on the shop floor. They had to track and make sure it was working at its optimal capacity, not overheating, and different things like that. The second use case was inventory optimization. So using machine learning and a machine learning driven forecasting tool to help this business engage in what if scenario modeling. So reducing stockouts and excess inventory, because again, with those machine learning algorithms, right, it can do almost way more than what a human can process, thousands and thousands of lines to say, if this were to happen, what if that? If this were to happen, what if that? And it creates all those results, produces it on a nice, aesthetically appeasing dashboard for the user, so that way they can make those business decisions for the future of the business.
Remember back in the old days, they used to do for the inventory analysis, you used to do economic order quantities, which is like an Apex type of like old school like very simple calculation they used to do. It was very, very, very rough. And always like, you always never had, like, you'd either run out of some stuff or you have too much of others. And that was like exactly Jeff's doing the little thumbs up. And that was like, now, with these AI algorithms and the modeling can just get so much more, they have so much more data to work with. So it's like, it's able to crunch those things and get closer to reality of modeling the real world than ever did before. So that's really exciting to see that.
Spot on there, Scott. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is a little self-serving because of what we do, but tell me a little bit about the importance of data quality in those algorithms, the importance of accurate information.
Yeah, Jeff, that's a good point. It's back to what Scott even said. It highlighted data is the key component for a lot of this to work. And obviously in the ERP world, we face that challenge as well, especially when you're hopefully going to migrate to a newer, better system. What data do I transition over, and how do I transition that over so it doesn't get corrupt and it stays the same so we can continue using it in the new system, right? So AI and ML are no different. They rely on good data. And back to Scott's point, I think the nice thing is once you have an abundance of good data, we also have different tools and technologies, right? We won't go down the rabbit hole, but we have what we call a data lake. And that basically is going to be everything data. So you push everything in that, and we kind of keep it high level here, unstructured versus structured data. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what it is. That's where the machine learning and the data science comes into play, where it can look at all of that data. And unlike a human would take a long time usually to process the amount of data. And also if it's unstructured, it's hard to read. Well, machine learning and AI come into play there. And as you said, with the data quality, as long as there's data there and it's accurate data, right, that's being transacted on a daily basis in the right manner, if the ERP has been implemented correctly and set up, right, then from there, we're just kind of latching on to that optimal, well-oiled machine and now taking the data that's being produced on a daily basis and trying to derive actionable business insights with it. But again, back to your point, it's got to be good data. And usually the more the better. I'd say in abundance is good. It's as good for the predictive modeling.
My experience with like AI is like, it's like my background is industrial engineering, so you had to do a lot of statistics type of analysis like that. And a lot of the AI models are based on a high level of statistics or regression models. They're basically trying to find their correlation or matching machines is what they are. They're saying like, here's data, and they're trying to get some kind of a cause and effect analysis or see a cause and effect in the data. So like we always talk about like accuracy versus consistency or precision of data. So like we think about like the AI models looking at the data. The more consistent the data is, the higher probability of it seeing a correlation. Even if the data is not always accurate, as long as it's consistently wrong and not sporadically right, you can still draw a correlation because it's a relative measurement, right? You're saying this is moving with this, even if this number is not quite the right number, it's still moving together. So we can make a predictive analysis on when this moves, this is going to go here, and we can see that in the data to then make decisions. And that's where like the precision of data even trumps the accuracy in a lot of ways as well. Has that been your experience too, Tyler? Kind of how these systems work, or?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Scott. I think it brings it to the point too, where the data, you want to make sure it's going to recognize those patterns. And back to the days of almost when we were in elementary school, right? Hopefully you were on the fence of when the teacher was handing out the tests and would put them face down. You were in the 90 to 100% range versus an outlier where maybe you got like a 45%, right? So yeah, the data is kind of looking at that. Hopefully we were on sometimes even the spectrum of the 110%. And you're like, how did I even get this high? I thought it was out of 100. So the system with AI and machine learning, to your point, is helping recognize those extreme outliers and then also looking for some consistency to draw those patterns, whether it's using linear regression, natural language processing. Random forest is a very popular one with all the scripting that comes behind it. So it's certainly going to help you identify those trends. And then I would say take it a step further, where we're probably aware in CloudSuite Industrial as well, we create those what if scenarios. So, as humans, we usually say if this, then that. Well, now machine learning and AI gives you maybe 20 if this, then that. And you can look at all 20 and find the most advantageous one for your business at the time.
Yeah, it's like a really good statistics machine. It's like people don't like. I mean, even the LLMs, like the large language models, work off of predictive analysis of the next word, right? They're literally just, and it's off. I mean, I was talking to somebody. It's like these vector databases and how they work, and hence why people were like, "Why is NVIDIA getting so big?" Is because they store the data as vectors in space in order for the. So not to get too techie, but like is literally like a 3D model of the data, and they what they do is they say this is close to this. Therefore, I could predict the next word or this. So all this data being and the correlation between them is how the AI appears to be intelligent,
Absolutely.
which is pretty. So like the data just becomes the core thing. Like the data becomes the asset
Yep.
at the end of the day. Yeah.
And back in my recruitment days, as you highlighted, I'll never forget, I actually helped recruit somebody that was helping with IBM acquisition of the Weather Channel. And I said, oh, so anytime a user opens up the weather app, now IBM knows their location, their history, et cetera. He goes, I didn't say that. So he said, data is the new oil. It's very powerful if it can be used in the right way. So you're spot on.
Well, I
Absolutely.
love that. I love that with the data is the new oil. That's
Yeah.
I'm totally stealing that one.
I liked your advanced statistic machine too, because again,
Yeah.
even Jeff can appreciate this. I'm sure I'll date myself, but I chat with my dad a lot of times about AI and ML, right? He worked for Booz Allen Hamilton back in the day, and he goes, none of these concepts are really that new. He said, in Excel, I was running macros and automating some of the processes for expense management. And he's like, that was technically machine learning. It learned exactly what it was at the end. If it noticed a outlier or a variance, it would help red flag it. So, it's just, again, like we've talked about here a lot today, it's helping understand what it can do for you and almost showing them that as a consultant to say, okay, I can see my business actually fitting that mold a little bit and it giving us those results, right?
It's just scale and speed. It's really what you're applying an old concept, but giving it scale and speed to do things at a level it could never do before. Like you could have done everything. It just would took 100 years to get there.
Absolutely.
Older technology.
Yes.
Now the technology is they figured out a way to get to get the bits to do the thing you wanted to do faster. But it's still statistics at the end of the day. It's math.
Yep.
It's what it is. Yeah.
Doesn't change. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. The data is the new oil is a good concept. And of course, as I mentioned, self-servingly, because we're in the front end of that data, right? It says CADTALK at least. I don't want to get too far into it's not a conversation about CADTALK, but I always think about like, sometimes people ask us, well, what's the value of what we do? Of course, it's the time savings and all of that. But I always get back to that consistency of data, right? That consistency of that data. Those AI algorithms have a harder time dealing with a lot of inconsistent data because it's like, well, how do I predict this, right? I can't see patterns.
If you think about data being the oil, anything that helps you make that data more consistent and reliable is essentially an asset or a tool worth having, right? It's self-serving, but it's like I would say that with anything that is that anytime you can make that data, like we used to talk about this when I implemented Sightline or CloudSuite back when I was a customer years ago, and people would ask about like you buy this ERP system, and then and then when things got like, they would say the ERP would slow them down from production. And then they do is they say, well, because you got to do all these things, you got to clock in and out on the jobs, and you got to do all this extra transactions and all this stuff. And we just need to get stuff out the door. And I'm like, guys, the part that you're making is actually less valuable than the data over time. I said, so every time that you like, I know you got to sell the thing, and that's the short-term thing, but over time, if we're not collecting enough data, then that's how the business runs. So the data actually becomes more valuable than the individual component in which you're transacting against.
Absolutely.
And they thought I was crazy when I said that, but and that was 20 years ago, and that's actually true today. Like the data becomes the asset, it's the oil. Mm-hmm. So because you're able to then figure out how to make the next part even better and be competitive. So it's like a lot of people don't think of themselves as not only are they a manufacturing company, but they're a data company too.
Absolutely. And highlighting Jeff's point, going back to, it's like you can have oil, right? But and I'm no gasoline or oil expert, but I know you can't just go to an oil field and put that into your car. It's got to be refined to be able to use appropriately. Well, same with, an appropriate tool like CADTALK. If you don't have the tools to ingest the data and make it accurate and consistent, you're just sitting with data. That doesn't do anything to anybody. So.
All right. Absolutely.
So Tyler, what excites you about what's coming up at Infor? Like what's the next new thing that you're pumped about, that you like to talk to customers about? I mean, customers always want very kind of tactical, what can I use today, right? Which makes perfect sense, right? Because they have an immediate needs. But what do you look at kind of on the horizon that's like, that's the the next thing, the new coolness that, the roadmap things that Infor is doing, or directionally, what do you see as the next cool thing to come out?
Yeah, Jeff, that's a great point. I think it kind of what's always on the roadmap and what's realistically on the roadmap, right? So, Infor's decision to incorporate AI, obviously they were looking at industry trends. So, the manufacturing sector's digital transformation obviously is becoming more intelligent, more data driven. You have technology advancements as well. So the maturation of AI, machine learning, and ERP as a whole, being able to operate with these new technologies has become big. And then I would say probably the most important, I try to think in threes like McKinsey & Co., is the three rules to strategic partnership, right? Infor's partnership with AWS dating right all the way back to 2013. We knew that cloud was big. And then on top of that, they have tools like Redshift and other things sitting underneath their technology layers that happen, again, going back to the first point we talked about of things that happen in the background that we kind of take for granted, things that are manufactured. Well, same with AWS's platform. We see the cloud and what it has to offer from a data perspective, so I can watch Netflix or all these large files are hosted. But what we're not seeing is the underlying technology that's able to do things like OCR document processing and AP automation. So that sits under the layer of AWS. So that's a tool for machine learning and document processing, for example. So yeah, that strategic partnership with Infor and AWS, I would say, is a true standout, and definitely puts us in a very strategic competitive advantage, I would say, amongst most others in the game right now.
So if I'm a manufacturing company, right, and I'm listening to this podcast, right, I'm an engineer, or I work in operations, work in a manufacturing company, and I hear about AI and I hear about all this stuff, my question is going to be like how do I start? I don't, like anything else, the hardest part is the starting, right? It's the inertia. Where do I start? How do I start? What's my first step? What's my second step?
Yeah, so first off, kind of as we've discussed today, there are two things that stand out right off the bat before you really even have to do any deep thinking. Do you have a current state-of-the-art ERP system, right? If we're being honest here, right? If we're working with an AS400, probably other priorities in place first before we start talking about AI and ML for the future. I'm not saying it's not important, but again, you've got to have a system that can handle these newer technologies, almost like very easy metaphor, I would say, is a phone, right? If unfortunately I maintained my old iPhone 6 thinking I was going to be in good situation now that I have an iPhone 12, and it's like, oh, I have both. I can juggle whatever one I want, right? Well, lo and behold, the iPhone 6 doesn't operate with any of the new applications because the software is so out of date. So when you Google what you can use an old iPhone for, it's like 3 or 4 different things. A media player, like a remote or something, it becomes very obsolete, if you will.
A paperweight.
Exactly. Yes. So and you spend all this money on it, and I try to pat myself on the back a little bit. I try to treat my technology nice. I get a case for it. I try not to drop it, and all for what, right? So long story short, ERP system, you want to make sure it is state of the art, as new as possible. Obviously, bias CloudSuite Industrial version 10, something in the cloud is going to be advantageous to you the most. Then I'd say the next step is very important, is to conduct a skills assessment, right? Understand maybe who on your payroll, anybody in the managerial or anything that have come from experience that knows anything about AI and ML, right? Develop a comprehensive change management strategy to ensure the smooth adaptation of these new technologies and processes. So maybe start with one. A great example of this is finite versus infinite planning, right? We usually encourage customers to start off with one major bottleneck and then template that and push it out to the rest. Similar step here, try to invoke one concept of machine learning AI. A good one of that is document processing. Bring in a supplier or vendor invoice, allow the Infor document processor to read it and bring in all that metadata, and then automatically match it with the purchase order that you had in there, and then maybe go through one last human verification step to make sure everything's there for the three-way match that the system put together, right? But that's a perfect concept. And then after a couple months, maybe try to see the return on investment on time and cost savings that you got from that one applicable instance. And then last but not least, I would say ensure data quality and quantity, right? You want to make sure, obviously, you have enough data when you're implementing these AI and ML predictive models. And obviously the data is good. You got to make sure it's quality data.
So it sounds like, if I were to give like a checklist, right, to somebody, you'd say, first step, assess your ERP, right? Am I on a a platform that would be conducive for these types of things. If I'm not, number one, first step, right? It's like, best time to start investing is 30 years ago. But if you didn't, but the next best is right now, right? Like start moving that direction. Next step is like, make sure you have robust processes for collecting data if you don't have it, right? Make sure that you have ways in which to collect data consistently, right? Automate those processes as much as you can for that data collection. Get in more data, the better. And from there, you can start thinking about picking one use case, picking one way and one opportunity to try AI, right? Just one thing. It's like anything else, right? It's one step at a time, one bite at a time. You're not going to do it all at once. You got to have the fundamentals in place first, though. Once you have the fundamentals, and if you don't have the fundamentals, of course, focus on those, right? Don't get too wowed by the shiny objects.
Exactly. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I think also you can also think about like identifying where there's points of data that would be useful. Like you brought up the kind of the preventative maintenance model earlier, which I've actually heard several times. Is a great use case for like machine learning models, and is that idea of like we can get these measurements. This is a good case of where quality of data really drives a lot, because these machines have all these sensors and everything on them that provide a lot of information. It's a large amount of information. And then it's perfect for like an AI model or these types of situations, because you got machines talking to machines, right? As opposed to human kind of entered data, right? So in the case of a machine tool, the machine tool is running, it's feeding off things from sensors, and that data is very as clean as it's going to get, right? It could be inaccurate, but it's at least consistent, right? And that's feeding it. So you have large amounts of data feeding in, and you have events that happen that you can look from the past, that you can then get predictive models to figure out where these are at. And you're like, so a lot of times if you're I would say if you're a manufacturer, look at where you have good, consistent data already, and then start there. And then that would be a place to at least experiment with. It may not be the place where you're going to get the biggest return on investment, because that might be different, but you can get you an idea, or get your mind around how a problem could be solved. And once you understand a use case, then your brain can expand to the other use case. You're like, wow, if I could do this for scheduling, it'd be even cooler. But man, I don't have the data. So how do I get the data in place to make sure that I can use it for scheduling? Another common would be commit to order. Like, how can I get it? Data is good enough to where I can actually tell the customer when they buy something when they're going to get it. And so things like that. So there's all that kind of analysis. It gives you, like, once you understand one use case, then you understand the quality and the consistency of the data. You might have to shore up for the next use case and things like that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Wow, Tyler, this is a great conversation. You and I have crossed paths in the past, right? On demonstrations and at different conferences and that sort of thing. Other than I knew that you worked at Infor and that you and I were on demos together, I really understand kind of what your role was. So I liked that you had a lot of insight into AI and how to use that. And your background's super interesting. I always like finding people, this is a little selfish, finding people with different interesting backgrounds, because of, it's a kinship there for me being the weirdo, right? Having a weird background. So Tyler, tell us a little bit about how can people learn more about, say you or Infor, or, things that you're involved in, or, how do people find you, or, what's the best place to go in terms of social media, email address, phone number, smoke signal?
Absolutely. Yes. So I would say right off the bat, LinkedIn. I do have a updated LinkedIn. I keep pretty open, and I'm always following up-to-date things there. So I would say, obviously, the big four, ranging from Deloitte, is huge into AI right now. Same with PwC, Bain and Co., McKinsey and Co., and those group of companies as well are constantly coming up with use cases and return on investment. And then last but not least, I'd say Gartner. Obviously, we use it Infor here as well to rank us, but also they do a lot of great surveys, right? So back to Jeff, even your point and Scott's, is like, how important is AI and ML to C-suite? And I would say, following it myself over the past 5 years, it's certainly transitioned to a much higher percentage. Before it was, they're buzzwords. We need to get other things in place first. Now I think companies are starting to realize the competition is taking it on. So if they don't take it on, they're going to be left in the dust or barely hanging on. So other resources might be Infor's official website, and I know CADTALK has a great website as well. So constantly producing things there. I know you guys have this running podcast of always up and coming innovative topics to go through. There's industry conferences. We have the Sightline User Network, as we're all probably familiar with. It's going to be held in Anaheim, California this year, and last year it was in Tampa, Florida. So they try to find some warm places. And if you're part of the Sightline CloudSuite industrial community, certainly a great place to learn ways to apply these different use cases and even get into the weeds of things like advanced planning and scheduling and things like that. And last but not least, I'd say academic publications or even online courses. As I said, I've been self-taught with some boot camps. I know, Scott, you mentioned as well. So Coursera is out there, and sometimes they even offer free courses on just kind of things like the difference of artificial intelligence and RPA, robotic process automation. Like, what are the key differences, and what makes one unique over the other?
Absolutely. Very cool.
Tyler, thanks for joining the podcast. It was great to talk to you. I guess when the Sun Conference comes up in February, is that something you typically attend?
Absolutely. Yep. I should be there. Mm-hmm.
Okay, us as well. So as normal, we'll have a booth there, doing a talk and all of that, and we would have some interesting new news with CADTALK's partnership with Infor. So that'll be a new exciting update. So we'll announce that here soon, getting ready for that event. So Tyler, I really appreciate you coming on here and having a conversation. It was really enjoyable. Before we let you go, anything else you'd like to share?
I would just say, sad, it's coming to an end. So no, thank you so much for having me as an opportunity to be on the podcast. It's been a privilege, and again, just coming back to the AI and ML, I'd say it's truly fundamentally transforming manufacturers through intelligent technologies, and now is the time to really latch on to these concepts and get a trusted advisor. I would say, get someone that can truly make sense of these terms and things like that, and bring true savings and time savings or cost savings or both to your business, because these technologies are out there now and can be really put to good use.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Tyler. You have a good one, and we'll see you soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks.